Ethan had always been curious. From the moment he had set foot on the alien space station, he had felt a mix of excitement and unease. The station hovered silently above an unknown planet, glowing softly against the darkness of space. It was a marvel of technology and design, unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Pipes and conduits twisted along the walls, glowing with energy. Hallways curved in impossible angles, and doors slid open with a gentle hiss whenever someone approached. As a human engineer, he had been brought here to repair the station's energy core, a task that was challenging enough even without the distractions of this alien world. But curiosity had a way of getting the better of him. Ethan was supposed to be following a strict path through the maintenance corridors. Maps and holographic schematics guided his every step, but his eyes wandered, drawn to the strange architecture and the occasional glimpse of alien life moving in and out of rooms. There was something mesmerizing about this place. Even the air smelled different, faintly metallic but tinged with something else, something almost like flowers. He shook his head. He needed to focus. The energy core wasn't going to repair itself. He turned a corner, following a set of instructions in his hand, when he noticed a door that wasn't on any map he had seen. It was taller than the others, made of a smooth, pale material that seemed to shimmer in the light. A soft hum came from behind it, almost like it was alive. Something told him not to enter, a tiny voice in his head warning him that this wasn't his space, but curiosity won. He pressed the panel beside the door, expecting it to remain locked. To his surprise, the door slid open effortlessly, revealing a room bathed in soft, warm light. The moment he stepped in, his breath caught. He had expected a simple chamber or maybe a storage area, but what he saw was something else entirely. The room was enormous, larger than any human bedroom he had ever seen. Every surface seemed carefully designed, every object glowing faintly as if infused with energy. There were plants, or something like them, suspended in midair. Their leaves shimmered in colors he couldn't name. A large bed, seemingly carved from a single piece of translucent material, floated slightly above the ground. The walls were decorated with patterns that shifted as he watched, almost as if the room itself was alive. And at the center of it all stood her. Solara, the alien queen, turned to face him. She was unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. She was tall, taller than any human woman he had ever seen, and her skin glowed faintly, iridescent in the soft light of the room. Her eyes were large and luminous, reflecting the colors of the plants around her. Her hair, long and flowing, seemed to float as though underwater, moving gently even though there was no breeze. She wore clothing that shimmered like liquid metal, perfectly fitted yet appearing weightless. Ethan froze. His heart raced. He had walked into the private chamber of the most powerful being on the station, and she was staring at him without fear, without panic. There was authority in her gaze, yes, but also curiosity. She studied him as though trying to understand a strange puzzle. Ethan could only stand there, caught between awe and terror. The Queen's guards were nearby, alerted by his presence. Ethan could hear the soft click of their weapons as they prepared to intervene. But Solara lifted a hand and they stopped. Her calm presence seemed to command the entire room. Ethan realized that she was not only regal but also extremely powerful. One gesture from her and he would be completely at her mercy. I'm sorry, Ethan stammered. I didn't mean to. I was just... Solara tilted her head slightly as if amused. You are not supposed to be here, she said, her voice melodic but firm. It was alien, but somehow Ethan understood every word. Why have you come? Ethan swallowed hard. I'm an engineer. I was fixing the energy core. I didn't know this room existed. I didn't mean to intrude. Solara's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in thought. She walked closer, her step silent, floating almost as though the ground itself accepted her presence. Ethan noticed that the plants and the objects in the room seemed to respond to her. They leaned, shifted, and glowed more brightly as she moved. The room was alive and she was its center. You are human, she said, more as a statement than a question. Ethan nodded, still frozen in place. Curiosity brought you here, she added. Her gaze softened slightly. Curiosity can be dangerous in my world. Ethan nodded quickly. I understand. I won't cause any trouble. He stopped, unsure how to explain the mix of awe and fear he felt. He had never seen anything so beautiful, so powerful. The Queen was unlike anyone he had ever met. Solara studied him for a moment longer. Then, surprisingly, she stepped aside. You may leave, she said. But remember, not all who enter my chamber are granted this courtesy. Ethan could hardly believe his luck. He backed toward the door, careful not to touch anything, not to make a sound. His mind raced with questions about her, the room, the station, and this strange world. He had come here as a simple engineer, and he had seen the private space of an alien queen. As he stepped out of the chamber, he could feel her gaze on his back. It was not threatening, not exactly, but it was there, and it made him shiver. He walked quickly down the corridor, trying to calm his racing heart. The station suddenly seemed smaller, less mysterious, and yet more dangerous. One wrong step, one miscalculated move, and he could have angered the most powerful being he had ever encountered. Back in his quarters, Ethan sat down and tried to think. What had he seen? The room, the queen, the plants, the energy. Everything was beyond comprehension. And yet there was something else, something he couldn't define. It wasn't just awe. It was a spark of fascination, a desire to understand this world and the being who ruled it. He knew he had to be careful, but he also knew he could not forget what he had seen. The next day, Ethan returned to the maintenance corridors, pretending everything was normal. But his mind kept drifting back to Solara, to the room, to the way the objects had responded to her presence. He realized something remarkable. Humans were rare on this station, and yet he had survived the Queen's scrutiny. Perhaps she had seen something in him, some spark of ingenuity or courage. Perhaps this was just the beginning of something he could not yet imagine. Even as he worked on the energy core, tightening circuits and adjusting power flows, Ethan's thoughts wandered. He imagined the Queen walking through her chamber, her movements elegant and precise, her eyes glowing softly. He wondered what it was like to live in a world so advanced where even a room could feel alive, and though he knew he could never speak of it openly, he felt a growing connection, a curiosity that went beyond engineering, beyond duty. By the end of the day, the repairs were complete. The station hummed with renewed energy, and the corridors glowed softly in the dim light. Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a lingering tension. He had glimpsed something extraordinary, something beyond human understanding, and though he had left the Queen's chamber physically unharmed, he knew he would never leave it from his mind. As he prepared to rest, Ethan allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had always believed that curiosity was a gift, a tool for understanding and discovery. But here in this alien station, he realized it could also be dangerous. One misstep could have cost him everything. Yet despite the danger, he felt exhilarated. He had seen the Queen, witnessed her power and grace, and survived. He had glimpsed a world unlike any he had ever known. And somewhere deep in his mind, he knew that this encounter was only the beginning. The Queen had noticed him, and he had noticed her. The station was vast, filled with secrets and wonders, and he had a role to play in it, whether he understood it yet or not. Curiosity had brought him here, and it would guide him further, toward discoveries he could never have imagined. Ethan lay down, finally allowing himself to rest, but sleep was slow to come. His thoughts swirled with images of glowing plants, floating beds, and eyes that seemed to see into his very soul. He realized he would never be the same again. The station, the Queen, and the strange living room were burned into his memory. He had entered a world that challenged everything he thought he knew, and he knew with a certainty that both excited and unnerved him that he would return, one way or another, to that room, to that Queen, to the mysteries that awaited him. Ethan woke the next morning with the memory of the Queen's chamber still vivid in his mind. Sleep had brought him no escape from the images of glowing plants, floating beds, and Solara herself. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he had been given a rare chance, one human rarely experienced. He had glimpsed not just power, but intelligence, grace, and an understanding of the universe that surpassed anything he had learned on Earth. And yet, the memory of her gaze stayed with him, the curiosity, the quiet testing of him, and perhaps a subtle acknowledgement of his presence. The energy core he had repaired the previous day hummed steadily in the station's central chamber. The engineer's reports indicated that the systems were stable, but Ethan felt a restless pull in his chest. There was more to the station than circuits and energy grids. There were mysteries, layers of life and technology intertwined in ways humans had only begun to understand, and he wanted to know more. As he walked through the corridors toward the next maintenance area, he noticed something unusual. A panel on the wall glowed briefly, showing schematics he had not seen before. He approached it carefully, scanning the information. It appeared to be part of the station's private sectors, areas generally restricted to the Queen and her closest advisors. Ethan hesitated, then remembered the Queen's chamber. Perhaps this was a sign, an opportunity to learn without intrusion. But he reminded himself to be cautious. Curiosity was powerful, but caution was necessary for survival. Suddenly, alarms blared through the station. Red lights flashed along the corridors, casting everything in a harsh, urgent glow. Ethan's heart raced. He ran toward the source of the alarm, following the emergency signals. The station's AI announced a critical failure in one of the main energy conduits. If it wasn't addressed immediately, the station could suffer catastrophic damage. When Ethan reached the control chamber, he was not alone. Solara herself stood at the central console, her eyes focused and sharp. Her presence was commanding, but not intimidating. She gestured for him to approach. "You are human," she said calmly, "yet you are the one most capable of fixing this." Ethan swallowed hard but nodded. "I'll do my best." Solara moved aside, giving him access to the controls. As he worked, he noticed the precision of her movements. She was not just a ruler. She was a strategist, a problem solver. Her hands moved gracefully across the console, adjusting readings, interpreting data, and anticipating problems before they appeared. Ethan marveled at her skill. Even in a crisis, she remained composed, her eyes glowing softly with intelligence and awareness. For the next few hours, Ethan and Solara worked together. Sparks flew as energy arcs leaped across broken circuits. Alarms sounded and faded. The two of them moved in synchrony, humans and aliens communicating not only through words but through gestures, understanding, and intuition. Ethan realized that this was more than a simple repair. It was a dance of intelligence and courage, trust and mutual respect. At one point, a conduit exploded, sending a shower of sparks across the floor. Ethan dove to avoid it, but Solara's quick reflexes saved him. She extended her hand, guiding him to safety, and he caught a glimpse of something human in her expression. Concern. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it struck him deeply. The Queen, who commanded entire fleets and controlled the lives of thousands, had shown him a moment of care. Finally, after hours of intense work, the energy core stabilized. The alarms ceased, the red lights dimmed, and the station returned to its usual soft glow. Ethan leaned against a console, breathing heavily. Solara observed him quietly, her expression unreadable at first, then slowly softening. "You performed admirably," she said, her voice calm but warm. "Not many humans could have handled this. Your courage and skill are remarkable." Ethan felt a flush of pride but also a strange humility. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said. "I was just doing my job." Solara stepped closer, and Ethan noticed how the environment seemed to respond to her presence again. The lights dimmed slightly, the floating plants shifted gently, and the air itself seemed charged with energy. It was as if the room recognized her authority, her power, and perhaps her curiosity. "You are not like the others," she said softly. "You see things differently. You think differently. That is why you are here at the center of this moment." Not by accident, Ethan's mind reeled. He had survived the chamber, survived the crisis, and now the Queen spoke to him with what felt like genuine interest. He realized that his presence, his curiosity, and even his mistakes had drawn her attention. For the first time, he understood that humans, small and seemingly fragile as they were, could make a difference in this vast, alien universe. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself drawn to Solara's quarters, not to intrude, but to observe the patterns of the station, the flows of energy, and the ways she moved through her domain. He never approached without permission, always keeping a respectful distance, yet he could not help but notice the way the Queen interacted with her world. Her intelligence, empathy, and curiosity were evident in every movement, every decision. It fascinated him. One evening, as the station's lights dimmed to mimic the distant planet's night, Solara invited Ethan to join her for a private discussion. He was nervous, but he trusted her. The room was calm, the glow soft, and the energy within the chamber seemed to hum gently. Solara regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and respect, her eyes reflecting a depth he had not anticipated. "You have adapted well," she said. "Humans are not easily understood here. Most are afraid, or they fail to comprehend the complexity of our world. Yet you approach it with intelligence, caution, and curiosity. That is rare. Ethan nodded, feeling both proud and humbled. I try to understand, Your Majesty. I want to learn, not just repair. There is so much here I don't know. So much I want to see. Solara smiled faintly, a gesture that made Ethan's heart beat faster. Curiosity is a gift, she said, but it must be tempered with respect. You have shown both. That is why you remain here. For the first time, Ethan felt that he was not just a visitor on this station. He was a participant, someone whose actions mattered, whose decisions could influence the course of events. And in that moment, he realized that he respected the Queen not just for her power, but for her wisdom, her composure, and her unexpected humanity. Over the next several days, Ethan continued to work closely with Solara. They repaired systems, solved crises, and navigated the complexities of the station together. With each passing day, he noticed more about her, the small, almost imperceptible ways she expressed care for her people, the moments when her curiosity mirrored his own, and the subtle ways she acknowledged his skill and intelligence. He began to see her not just as a ruler, but as a being capable of forming bonds, capable of recognizing value in those who were different from her. The Queen, in turn, seemed to study Ethan, not just his abilities, but his character, his reactions, and his perspective on the universe. She asked questions about humans, about Earth, about the choices he would make in unfamiliar situations. She listened with genuine interest, as if discovering an entirely new world through his eyes. Ethan realized that she was learning from him, just as much as he was learning from her. One evening, after a particularly challenging repair mission, Solara led Ethan to the edge of the station, where they could see the distant planet below. The view was breathtaking. Oceans shimmered in shades he had no names for, and mountains glowed faintly under the alien sun. Solara stood beside him, silent, letting him take in the beauty. You see the world differently, she said quietly. Humans have a perspective that is unique. You notice things we overlook, value things we take for granted. That is admirable. Ethan looked at her, feeling a mixture of awe and respect. I never thought I would be recognized for that, he said. I am just doing what I can, trying to survive and learn. Solara turned to him, her eyes luminous in the dim light. You are more than that, she said. You have shown courage, intelligence, and a capacity to understand. That is why you are here and why you will continue to be here. Humans are small in the universe but capable of greatness. You have proven it. Ethan felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He realized that his encounter with the Queen had changed him. He was no longer just a human engineer on an alien station. He was someone whose actions mattered, whose curiosity and courage could influence an entire world. And he understood for the first time that humans could leave a mark, not through size or power, but through intelligence, resilience, and the willingness to understand and respect what was different. As the days passed, the bond between Ethan and Solara deepened, not romantically, not yet, but as allies, as beings who recognized each other's value. They faced crises together, explored mysteries of the station, and shared insights about their worlds. And though the station was vast, with secrets still hidden in every corridor and chamber, Ethan knew one thing for certain. His life had changed forever. He had walked into the Queen's chamber by accident, and yet that moment had set him on a path he could never have imagined. He had discovered that humans were capable of amazing things, even in a world dominated by beings far older and more advanced. And he had discovered that the Queen, for all her power, could see the value of a